I walked into the Hale Corporation boardroom, expecting a normal meeting. Instead, I saw every executive sitting in silence. My father sat at the head of the table with a tense expression. I frowned. What's going on? Why does everyone look like someone died? No one answered. My stepmother Lydia crossed her arms and looked away. My sister Clara stared down at the table. I pulled out my chair slowly. Dad, you called this emergency meeting. What's the problem? My father cleared his throat. Sit down, Daniel. The way he said my name made my stomach tighten. I am sitting, I replied. Now tell me what's happening. He looked around the room at the board members. Before we begin, he said quietly, I want everyone here to understand that today will change the future of the Hale family. I laughed lightly. That sounds dramatic. No one laughed with me. Then the door opened. A man I'd never seen before walked in with confident steps. He looked around my age, maybe a little older. Tall, calm, dressed in a dark suit that probably cost more than my car. I frowned. Who is this? My father gestured toward him. This is Adrian. The man gave me a small smile. Adrian who? I asked. He pulled out a chair and sat down like he belonged there. Adrian Hale, he said. I stared at him. That's funny, I replied. Because I'm Daniel Hale. The boardroom stayed silent. Adrian leaned back comfortably. Yes, he said. I know. My patience started to disappear. Dad, I said sharply. Why is this guy using our name? My father rubbed his temples. Daniel, listen carefully. I'm listening. His voice felt heavier than usual. There's something you deserve to know. I leaned forward. Then say it. He hesitated. Lydia spoke instead. Daniel, she said coldly, you should let him finish. I looked at her. Why are you acting like this? Clara whispered softly. Please just listen. My chest tightened. Fine, I said. Talk. My father slowly placed a folder on the table. These documents were verified yesterday, he said. Adrian slid the folder toward me. Go ahead, he said calmly. Take a look. I opened it. DNA test results. Birth records. Legal documents. I frowned as I read them. Then my heart stopped. I looked up slowly. This is a joke, right? No one answered. I pushed the papers across the table. This says I'm not your biological son. My father's eyes filled with regret. Daniel, I slammed my hand on the table. Tell me this is fake. Adrian folded his hands. It isn't, he said. I glared at him. Stay out of this. He shrugged slightly. Hard to do when it involves me. My voice rose. Why would it involve you? He leaned forward. Because I'm the biological son of Richard Hale. The words echoed in my head. I turned to my father. You're seriously letting him say this? My father whispered, It's true. The room started spinning. No, I said slowly. No, this is impossible. Lydia sighed impatiently. The hospital made a mistake 28 years ago, she explained. 2 babies were switched. I stared at her. And you just figured that out now? Adrian answered calmly. My mother discovered the truth before she died, he said. She asked me to confirm it. I shook my head. This is insane. Clara finally spoke. Daniel, the tests were verified by 3 labs. I looked at her. You believe this? Tears filled her eyes. I don't know what to believe. I turned back to my father. You raised me, I said quietly. You taught me everything. And now you're telling me I'm not your son? He looked older than I had ever seen him. You will always be important to me, he said. That's not what I asked. Silence filled the room. Then one of the board members cleared his throat. Mr. Hale, he said carefully, the legal situation is complicated. I turned to him. Complicated how? He adjusted his glasses. If Adrian Hale is the biological heir, then the leadership structure of the company must be reconsidered. I stared at him in disbelief. You're serious? Another board member nodded. The shareholders will expect it. Anger burned inside me. I built half this company, I said. I spent 10 years working 18-hour days. Adrian looked at me calmly. That must have been difficult, he said. I clenched my fists. You think this is funny? He shook his head. No, I think it's unfortunate. I stood up. So what now? You just walk in and take everything. Lydia spoke without hesitation. The truth deserves its place. I looked at her. So that's it? After all these years? She avoided my eyes. My father finally spoke again. The board has already voted. My stomach dropped. You voted? One executive nodded. The decision was unanimous. I laughed bitterly. Of course it was. My father looked down. Daniel, effective today, Adrian will take the position of heir and acting executive director. The words hit me like a punch. So I'm fired? My father whispered. You are relieved of your duties. Adrian slowly stood up. Daniel, he said quietly, I know this is hard. I laughed again. You have no idea. He hesitated. I'm not your enemy. I stared straight at him. You walked into my life and took everything. He didn't respond. I looked around the table. Every face avoided mine. 10 years, I said slowly. I gave this company 10 years. No one answered. I picked up my jacket. Clara stood up suddenly. Daniel, wait. I shook my head. Don't. Her voice trembled. Please listen. There's nothing left to hear. I turned toward the door. Behind me, Adrian said quietly, I never asked for this. I stopped for a second. Then I said, congratulations anyway. No one followed me as I walked out of the boardroom. The elevator ride felt endless. When the doors finally opened, I stepped outside the building I had helped build. I stood there in silence. Then I whispered to myself, they replaced me just like that. The first week after I left Heir Corporation felt unreal. My phone used to ring every hour with meetings and decisions. Now it stayed silent on the small kitchen table of my new apartment. I stared at it and muttered, so this is what being forgotten looks like. Marcus leaned against the doorway with 2 cups of coffee. You're not forgotten. I glanced at him. Really? Try calling anyone from the company. He walked over and handed me a cup. You already tried that. I called 10 people yesterday, I said. 10. And 8 didn't answer. 2 said they were busy and hung up. Marcus sighed. They're scared. Of what? Of being on the wrong side of the Heir family. I took a slow sip of coffee. I was the Heir family a week ago. Marcus sat across from me. You were the one who actually ran things. Apparently, that didn't matter. Silence filled the room for a moment. Marcus looked around the small apartment. Still getting used to the place? I shrugged. It's quiet. He chuckled softly. That's one way to describe it. I leaned back in my chair. I used to wake up in a penthouse overlooking the city, I said. Now, my neighbor argues with his dog at 6 in the morning. Marcus grinned. At least the dog seems loyal. I smirked despite myself. Low bar. He leaned forward. Look, Daniel. This situation isn't permanent. I shook my head. You didn't see their faces in that boardroom. So, they were relieved, I said quietly, like they'd been waiting for an excuse. Marcus frowned. That's not true. You should have seen Lydia, I continued. She practically celebrated. He rubbed his temples. Your stepmother never liked you running the company. That's putting it politely. My phone suddenly buzzed. I grabbed it quickly. The screen showed an unknown number. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Maybe someone remembers you. I answered. Hello. A familiar voice responded. Daniel, it's Victor. I sat up straight. Victor Lang? Yes. Victor had been one of the senior executives at Heir Corporation for years. Why are you calling me? I asked. He lowered his voice. I wanted to check on you. Marcus mouthed silently. Who is it? I covered the phone. Victor. Marcus nodded slowly. I spoke again. I'm fine. Victor sighed. That's hard to believe. Is there a reason you called? Yes, he said. Things are different here. I leaned forward. What does that mean? There was a pause. Adrian is making big changes, Victor said carefully. Of course he is. He canceled 3 major projects this week. I blinked. 3. Yes. Those projects were already profitable. I know. I rubbed my forehead. What else? Victor hesitated. He fired 2 department heads. Boo. Karen from logistics and Samuel from operations. My jaw tightened. They were some of the best people in the company. Victor lowered his voice even more. Daniel, many employees are worried. Marcus leaned closer, trying to hear. I asked quietly, does my father know? He supports Adrian's decisions. That sounds like him. Victor sighed. I just thought you should know. Why tell me? I asked. Because you built most of the systems Adrian is dismantling. I laughed bitterly. Well, he's the real heir. Let him enjoy it. Victor spoke carefully. Some people believe the company is losing direction. That's not my problem anymore. Another pause. Are you sure about that? He asked. Yes. I ended the call. Marcus immediately asked, what did he say? Adrian is already making a mess. Marcus crossed his arms, surprising absolutely no one. I stood up and walked toward the window. The city looked the same, but my life felt completely different. Marcus spoke again. So what now? Now nothing, I said. He frowned. You can't mean that. I do. You're just going to sit here while they destroy the company you built? I shrugged. They already destroyed my place in it. Marcus shook his head. That company ran because of you, not according to the board. They panicked. They replaced me. Marcus leaned forward. Listen to me, Daniel. I turned toward him. You built their success, he said firmly. Your name might not be Heir anymore, but your skills didn't disappear. I laughed quietly. Try telling that to investors. I will. You're not serious. I am. I stared at him. Marcus, starting over isn't that simple. He smiled slightly. Nothing worth doing ever is. I sighed. You always say that, and you usually prove me right. I sat down again. What if they were right? I asked quietly. About what? Maybe I only succeeded because of the Heir name. Marcus looked at me like I had insulted him. Daniel, I watched you work 18-hour days for 10 years. That doesn't mean anything now. It means everything. I rubbed my face. I'm tired. Marcus leaned back. Then rest. But don't quit. I'm not quitting. Good. I'm just lost. Marcus nodded slowly. That part won't understand. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a news alert. Marcus glanced at the screen. What does it say? I read it out loud. Heir Corporation announces strategic restructuring under new leadership. Marcus chuckled. That sounds like corporate language for chaos. I tossed the phone onto the table. Let them have it. Marcus stood up. You know what I think? What? I think this is the best thing that ever happened to you. I stared at him. You've officially lost your mind. He grinned. No, I just know you. And what does that mean? It means you're about to prove everyone wrong. I leaned back in my chair. Right now, I just want a quiet life. Marcus laughed. You? Quiet. Why not? Because you're Daniel Heir. I looked at the ceiling. Apparently I'm not. Marcus shook his head. Names don't build empires. People do. I stayed silent for a moment. Then I asked softly, what if the empire is gone? Marcus smiled confidently. Then you build a new one. The first week after I left Heir Corporation felt unreal. My phone used to ring every hour with meetings and decisions. Now it stayed silent on the small kitchen table of my new apartment. I stared at it and muttered, so this is what being forgotten looks like. Marcus leaned against the doorway with 2 cups of coffee. You're not forgotten. I glanced at him. Really? Try calling anyone from the company. He walked over and handed me a cup. You already tried that. I called 10 people yesterday, I said. 10. And 8 didn't answer. 2 said they were busy and hung up. Marcus sighed. They're scared. Of what? Of being on the wrong side of the Heir family. I took a slow sip of coffee. I was the Heir family a week ago. Marcus sat across from me. You were the one who actually ran things. Apparently, that didn't matter. Silence filled the room for a moment. Marcus looked around the small apartment. Still getting used to the place? I shrugged. It's quiet. He chuckled softly. That's one way to describe it. I leaned back in my chair. I used to wake up in a penthouse overlooking the city, I said. Now my neighbor argues with his dog at 6 in the morning. Marcus grinned. At least the dog seems loyal. I smirked despite myself. Low bar. He leaned forward. Look, Daniel. This situation isn't permanent. I shook my head. You didn't see their faces in that boardroom. So, they were relieved, I said quietly, like they'd been waiting for an excuse. Marcus frowned. That's not true. You should have seen Lydia, I continued. She practically celebrated. He rubbed his temples. Your stepmother never liked you running the company. That's putting it politely. My phone suddenly buzzed. I grabbed it quickly. The screen showed an unknown number. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Maybe someone remembers you. I answered. Hello. A familiar voice responded. Daniel, it's Victor. I sat up straight. Victor Lang? Yes. Victor had been one of the senior executives at Heir Corporation for years. Why are you calling me? I asked. He lowered his voice. I wanted to check on you. Marcus mouthed silently. Who is it? I covered the phone. Victor. Marcus nodded slowly. I spoke again. I'm fine. Victor sighed. That's hard to believe. Is there a reason you called? Yes, he said. Things are different here. I leaned forward. What does that mean? There was a pause. Adrian is making big changes, Victor said carefully. Of course he is. He canceled 3 major projects this week. I blinked. 3. Yes. Those projects were already profitable. I know. I rubbed my forehead. What else? Victor hesitated. He fired 2 department heads. Who? Karen from logistics and Samuel from operations. My jaw tightened. They were some of the best people in the company. Victor lowered his voice even more. Daniel, many employees are worried. Marcus leaned closer, trying to hear. I asked quietly, does my father know? He supports Adrian's decisions. That sounds like him. Victor sighed. I just thought you should know. Why tell me? I asked. Because you built most of the systems Adrian is dismantling. I laughed bitterly. Well, he's the real heir. Let him enjoy it. Victor spoke carefully. Some people believe the company is losing direction. That's not my problem anymore. Another pause. Are you sure about that? He asked. Yes. I ended the call. Marcus immediately asked, what did he say? Adrian is already making a mess. Marcus crossed his arms, surprising absolutely no one. I stood up and walked toward the window. The city looked the same, but my life felt completely different. Marcus spoke again. So what now? Now nothing, I said. He frowned. You can't mean that. I do. You're just going to sit here while they destroy the company you built? I shrugged. They already destroyed my place in it. Marcus shook his head. That company ran because of you. Not according to the board. They panicked. They replaced me. Marcus leaned forward. Listen to me, Daniel. I turned toward him. You built their success, he said firmly. Your name might not be Heir anymore, but your skills didn't disappear. I laughed quietly. Try telling that to investors. I will. You're not serious. I am. I stared at him. Marcus, starting over isn't that simple. He smiled slightly. Nothing worth doing ever is. I sighed. You always say that, and you usually prove me right. I sat down again. What if they were right? I asked quietly. About what? Maybe I only succeeded because of the Heir name. Marcus looked at me like I had insulted him. Daniel, I watched you work 18-hour days for 10 years. That doesn't mean anything now. It means everything. I rubbed my face. I'm tired. Marcus leaned back. Then rest. But don't quit. I'm not quitting. Good. I'm just lost. Marcus nodded slowly. That part won't understand. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a news alert. Marcus glanced at the screen. What does it say? I read out loud. Heir Corporation announces strategic restructuring under new leadership. Marcus chuckled. That sounds like corporate language for chaos. I tossed the phone onto the table. Let them have it. Marcus stood up. You know what I think? What? I think this is the best thing that ever happened to you. I stared at him. You've officially lost your mind. He grinned. No, I just know you. And what does that mean? It means you're about to prove everyone wrong. I leaned back in my chair. Right now, I just want a quiet life. Marcus laughed. You? Quiet. Why not? Because you're Daniel Heir. I looked at the ceiling. Apparently I'm not. Marcus shook his head. Names don't build empires. People do. I stayed silent for a moment. Then I asked softly, what if the empire is gone? Marcus smiled confidently. Then you build a new one. Marcus leaned across the small kitchen table and tapped his finger against the wood. You're wasting time, he said. I frowned. I'm thinking. You've been thinking for 2 weeks. Processing. He rolled his eyes. Daniel, you built $1 billion division before you turned 30. Now you sit here staring at your phone like your life ended. My life did end, I muttered. No, he said firmly. Your job ended. That job was my life. Marcus leaned back in his chair. You remember the first day we toured Heir Corporation together? I sighed. Of course. You told me something that day, he continued. What? You said, one day I'll build something so big people won't believe it. I looked at him quietly. Yeah, I said that. So build it. I laughed bitterly. Starting a company isn't a hobby. Marcus shrugged. Neither is sitting around feeling sorry for yourself. I crossed my arms. You're enjoying this lecture. No, he said. I'm tired of watching you pretend you're powerless. I leaned forward. You think it's that easy? No, he replied. I think it's exactly as hard as you like. I opened my mouth to argue, but he spoke again. You built their empire once, he said slowly. Why can't you build your own? The words hit harder than I expected. I stayed quiet. Marcus noticed. Finally, he said, that got your attention. I rubbed my chin. You really think investors would back me? Absolutely. They might see me as damaged goods. Marcus laughed. You're the guy who made Heir Corporation profitable during a recession. That was years ago, and people still remember. I stood up and walked across the room. What kind of company? I asked. Marcus smiled. Now we're talking. I'm serious. Tech, he said immediately. Why tech? Because it's fast, flexible, and investors love it. I thought for a moment. I know someone, Marcus added. Who? A financial analyst named Sophia Carter. I raised an eyebrow. Never heard of her. You should. Why? Because she's brilliant. That's your professional opinion? Marcus grinned. She once predicted a market crash 2 months before it happened. That's impressive. She also quit a major firm last year. Why? Marcus shrugged. Apparently she hates stupid bosses. I smirked. We might get along. Good, Marcus said. Because I already scheduled a meeting. You what? He pulled out his phone and checked the screen. She'll be here in 20 minutes. I stared at him. You invited someone to my apartment? Relax. She's professional. You're unbelievable. He shrugged. You're welcome. 20 minutes later, a knock echoed through the apartment. Marcus opened the door. A confident woman stepped inside, holding a tablet. You must be Daniel, she said. I am. She extended her hand. Sophia Carter. I shook it. Marcus speaks highly of you. She smiled slightly. Marcus exaggerates. Marcus protested immediately. I do not. Sophia ignored him and looked at me. I read about what happened at Heir Corporation. That story spread fast. The business world loves drama, she said. I nodded. That sounds accurate. She sat down across from me. So Marcus says you want to start a company. I'm considering it. What industry? Technology. She tapped her tablet. Good choice. Why? Low overhead, high growth potential. Marcus pointed at her. See? I told you she's smart. Sophia continued calmly. But success depends on your idea. I leaned forward. I want to develop software that helps companies predict supply chain disruptions. Sophia's eyes sharpened. Predictive logistics? Exactly. She smiled slightly. That's interesting. Marcus grinned. That means she likes it. Sophia nodded once. It solves a real problem. I felt something shift inside me. So you'd help? She tilted her head. What's your goal? Growth, I said simply. How fast? As fast as possible. She studied me carefully. You're serious. I always am. Marcus laughed. That's the Daniel I remember. Sophia leaned back. All right, she said. I'm in. That easy? No, she replied. But your reputation matters. I nodded slowly. What's our first step? I asked. Funding, she answered. Marcus clapped his hands. Finally, Sophia opened her tablet. I know several investors, she said. Anyone reliable? I asked. She smiled slightly. One in particular. Who? Daniel Brooks. I raised my eyebrows. The venture capitalist? Yes. Marcus whistled softly. That's a big name. Sophia nodded. He invests in strong founders. I crossed my arms. And you think he'll meet us? She looked at me confidently. I already sent him a message. What did you say? She smirked. I told him a man who built Heir Corporation is building something new. Marcus grinned. That's perfect. A week later, we rented a tiny office downtown. I looked around the cramped space and laughed. Marcus asked, what's funny? I used to manage 5 floors of executives, I said. And now I share a desk with you. Marcus grinned. Humble beginnings. Sophia placed her laptop on the table. This is temporary, she said. I nodded. Good, Marcus added. Because this chair is terrible. Sophia ignored him. Daniel, she said. Daniel Brooks agreed to meet next week. I felt a spark of excitement. Already? Yes. Marcus pumped his fist. Let's go. I looked around the small office again. For the first time in months, I felt energy instead of anger. Marcus noticed my expression. What? He asked. I smiled slightly. I finally feel like I'm moving again. Sophia nodded. Good, she said. Marcus leaned forward. Just wait until the headlines appear. What headlines? I asked. He grinned widely. Former Heir builds new empire. I shook my head. This isn't about revenge. Sophia looked at me carefully. Then what is it about? I thought for a moment. Then I answered quietly, proving I never needed their name. 2 years can change everything. I realized that while standing in our new headquarters, looking out over a busy office filled with engineers and analysts, Marcus walked in holding a tablet. You're smiling, he said. That's suspicious. I turned toward him. Am I not allowed to smile? You are, he replied. But usually it means something interesting happened. I gestured toward the tablet in his hand. What's the news today? He tossed it onto my desk. Read the headline. I picked it up. Heir Corporation reports third consecutive quarterly loss. Marcus whistled. 3 quarters in a row, he said. That's brutal. I leaned back in my chair. I warned them about reckless expansion. Marcus crossed his arms. Apparently Adrian didn't listen. I stayed quiet for a moment. Marcus studied my face. You're not celebrating, he said. I don't feel like celebrating. That company kicked you out. I still bill half of it. Marcus nodded slowly. Fair point. Sophia walked in carrying a stack of reports. Are you two talking about Heir Corporation again? Marcus pointed at me. He started it. Sophia dropped the reports on the table. The market is definitely talking about it. I looked up. How bad is it? She opened one of the files. Debt is rising. Investor confidence is dropping. Marcus leaned forward. Adrian really messed up. Sophia nodded. He made 3 major investments last year. And I asked, all 3 are losing money. Marcus shook his head. That's impressive in the worst way. I sighed quietly. Sophia looked at me carefully. You still care about that company? I shrugged. I spent 10 years there. Marcus leaned against the wall. Your new company is doing better anyway. Sophia smiled slightly. He's right. She handed me another report. Our international expansion just passed projections. I scanned the numbers. 30% growth. Marcus grinned. Not bad for a company that started in your tiny apartment. I laughed softly. That apartment feels like a lifetime ago. Sophia sat down across from me. Daniel Brooks called this morning. I looked up. What did he say? He wants to increase his investment. Marcus raised his eyebrows. That's huge. Sophia nodded. He thinks we're about to dominate the logistics software market. I placed the report on the desk. That's the plan. Marcus suddenly pointed to the tablet again. But Heir Corporation isn't dominating anything right now. Sophia sighed. Executives are leaving. How many? I asked. 7 senior managers in 6 months. Marcus laughed. That's practically an evacuation. I leaned back in my chair. Adrian always underestimated people. Sophia tilted her head. What do you mean? He thinks authority equals loyalty. Marcus nodded. That's a dangerous mistake. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Marcus noticed. Who is it? Victor Lang. Sophia raised an eyebrow. Your old mentor? I nodded and answered the call. Victor. His voice sounded tired. Daniel. Thank you for picking up. That sounds serious. He sighed. Can we meet tonight? I looked at Marcus and Sophia. Why? Because things are worse than the headlines say. Marcus mouthed silently. Oh boy. I spoke into the phone. All right. Dinner at 8. That works, Victor said quietly. I ended the call. Marcus leaned forward. That sounded dramatic. Sophia agreed. Very dramatic. I stood up. He wouldn't call unless something was really wrong. Marcus smirked. Maybe Adrian finally broke the company. Let's not jump to conclusions, I said. But part of me wondered if Marcus might be right. That evening I sat across from Victor in a quiet restaurant. He looked older than I remembered. Daniel, he said, you look well. I've been busy. I can see that, he replied. I leaned forward. You said things were worse than the headlines. Victor sighed deeply. They are. How bad? He rubbed his forehead. Adrian invested heavily in a shipping startup that collapsed. I frowned. That explains some losses. There's more, Victor continued. Go on. He borrowed against company reserves to fund another project. I blinked. That's reckless. Yes. And the project failed. I stared at him. So the company is carrying massive debt. Victor nodded slowly. Exactly. I asked quietly. Where's my father in all this? He keeps defending Adrian. That sounds familiar. Victor lowered his voice. The board is panicking. What about investors? They're nervous. I folded my hands together. And employees? Many are leaving. I shook my head. That company used to attract the best talent. Victor looked at me carefully. They respected you. I didn't answer. He continued. Adrian doesn't listen to advice. I know. He ignores warnings. I know. Victor sighed. You built something strong there, Daniel. His words stirred something inside me. Marcus's voice echoed in my mind. You built their empire once. Victor leaned closer. Right now, the empire is cracking. I looked down at my glass. Part of me felt vindicated. Another part felt strangely sad. Victor studied my face. You still care, he said softly. I care about what it used to be. He nodded. That's fair. I asked quietly. Why are you telling me all this? Victor hesitated. Because the board remembers what you did. I looked up sharply. What does that mean? It means some people think the company made a terrible mistake. I leaned back slowly. That realization came 2 years late. Victor gave a tired smile. Better late than never. I didn't respond. Instead, I thought about the journey since that boardroom meeting. 2 years ago, I had walked away with nothing. Now, my company operated in 3 countries. Victor interrupted my thoughts. You've done well, Daniel. I worked for it. Yes, he said quietly. You did. I looked at him calmly. I'm not the rejected heir anymore. Victor nodded. I can see that. For the first time since leaving Heir Corporation, I felt something new. Not anger. Not bitterness. Power. I had built my own path. And this time, it belonged entirely to me. I was reviewing financial projections in my office when my phone vibrated. Marcus sat across from me, spinning a pen between his fingers. Another investor? He asked. Probably, I said while picking up the phone. Then I froze. Marcus noticed immediately. What? He asked. I slowly turned the screen toward him. He read the name and raised his eyebrows. Richard Hale. I stared at the phone. Marcus whispered, Your father. I know. Are you going to answer? I don't know. The phone kept ringing. Marcus leaned forward. Curiosity alone should make you answer. I sighed and pressed the button. Hello. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I heard his voice. Daniel. His voice sounded older. Tired. I leaned back in my chair. That's a number I didn't expect to see. He paused. I wasn't sure you would answer. I almost didn't. Another silence stretched between us. Finally, I asked, Why are you calling? He cleared his throat. I need to speak with you. You're speaking. Not like this. Marcus watched me carefully. I tapped the desk with my finger. What do you want, Richard? He sounded hurt by the name. I'd prefer if you still called me father. That depends on the conversation. Another pause. Daniel, can we meet? Why? Because it's important. I laughed quietly. Everything was important 2 years ago, too. His voice softened. Please. Marcus mouthed silently. What's happening? I covered the phone. He wants to meet. Marcus shrugged. Why not hear him out? I returned the phone to my ear. Where? The house. I almost laughed again. You mean the mansion you kicked me out of? It's still your home. No, I replied calmly. It isn't. He sounded exhausted. Daniel, just come tonight. I thought for a moment. Fine. What time? 8. I'll be waiting. The call ended. Marcus leaned back. That sounded serious. I noticed. What do you think he wants? I stood up and grabbed my jacket. I'm about to find out. Marcus pointed at me. Call me afterward. Of course. He smirked. This feels like the beginning of a dramatic movie. Let's hope it has a better ending. That evening, I stood outside the gates of the Hale mansion. For a moment, I didn't move. 2 years ago, I walked away from this place, believing I would never return. I walked inside slowly. The front door opened before I could knock. Clara stood there. She looked nervous. Daniel. Clara. Her eyes filled with emotion. I'm glad you came. I'm curious. She stepped aside. Everyone's in the living room. I entered the house. Everything looked the same, yet felt different. Lydia stood near the fireplace. She looked uncomfortable when she saw me. Daniel, she said quietly. I nodded politely. Lydia. Then I saw my father sitting on the sofa. He stood up slowly. Thank you for coming. I crossed my arms. You sounded desperate. Clara sat down quietly. Lydia avoided my eyes. I noticed something immediately. Where's Adrian? No one answered. I looked at my father. That's interesting. He rubbed his hands together. He's not here. Convenient. My father gestured toward a chair. Please sit. I remained standing. You didn't invite me for tea. He sighed. No. Then talk. Clara whispered softly. Daniel, please. I looked at her. You wanted this meeting too? She lowered her head. I just want the family to be okay. I smiled faintly. That's optimistic. My father finally spoke. The company is in trouble. I tilted my head. I read the news. It's worse than the news says. How much worse? He hesitated. Investors are losing confidence. That happens when leadership fails. Lydia finally spoke. Adrian made mistakes. I looked at her. That's a polite way to say disaster. She didn't argue. My father continued. Major clients are leaving. I nodded slowly. That's predictable. He looked at me carefully. Employees are resigning. Also predictable. Clara spoke softly. Daniel, people still respect you. I glanced at her. That didn't matter 2 years ago. My father stepped closer. The board is losing faith. I sighed. That sounds serious. He swallowed. The company might collapse. Silence filled the room. I studied their faces. Clara looked worried. Lydia looked uncomfortable. My father looked desperate. I spoke calmly. So why am I here? He took a deep breath. Because we need help. I almost laughed. You have Adrian. No one replied. That silence said everything. I walked slowly across the room. Let me guess, I said. Adrian's brilliant strategy didn't work. My father looked ashamed. He made several bad decisions. I stopped walking. That's unfortunate. Clara stood up suddenly. Daniel, please listen. I am listening. She looked directly at me. Everything is falling apart. I crossed my arms. You should have thought about that before. My father raised his voice slightly. We made a mistake. The words hung in the air. I stared at him. You're just realizing that. He nodded slowly. Yes. Lydia spoke quietly. We shouldn't have pushed you out. I raised an eyebrow. That's new. My father took another step closer. Daniel, we need you back. The room fell silent. Those words echoed my mind. 2 years ago, they removed me without hesitation. Now they were asking for my return. I looked at each of them. Clara watched me hopefully. Lydia looked uneasy. My father looked desperate. Memories flooded my mind. The boardroom. The betrayal. The moment they replaced me. I spoke quietly. You really think I'd come back? No one answered. They just waited. And for the first time since walking into that house, I smiled slightly. Now this conversation is interesting. The room stayed silent after my last sentence. My father finally spoke. Daniel, please say something. I leaned against the table. You want an answer? Yes, he said quickly. Clara looked hopeful. Lydia looked nervous. I folded my arms. All right, I said. Let's talk terms. My father blinked. Terms. You didn't expect me to return for free, did you? He hesitated. No. Good. I replied calmly. Clara looked confused. Daniel, this isn't a business deal. I looked at her. It absolutely is. My father nodded slowly. What do you want? I walked closer and sat down across from him. If I return, I control everything. Lydia frowned. What does that mean? It means I become CEO with full authority. My father rubbed his chin. That might be possible. I continued. The board steps aside. Lydia's eyes widened. The entire board? Yes. My father looked uneasy. That's complicated. I shrugged. So, is rebuilding a collapsing company? Clara whispered. Daniel. I raised my hand slightly. I'm not finished. The room went quiet again. I looked directly at my father. Adrian loses all authority. Lydia spoke immediately. That's unfair. I turned to her. Unfair. Her voice sharpened. He's still Richard's son, and I built the company he destroyed. She stayed silent. My father sighed. Daniel, removing Adrian will cause problems. I leaned forward. So will bankruptcy. That ended the argument. Clara looked at my father. Dad, he's right. Lydia shook her head. This is humiliating. I looked at her calmly. You humiliated me 2 years ago. She didn't reply. My father finally spoke again. If we agree to this, will you really come back? I studied his face. You sound desperate. He didn't deny it. Because I am. I leaned back. Then accept my conditions. Silence filled the room. My father closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, he looked older. I agree. Clara exhaled with relief. Lydia looked shocked. You can't be serious, she said. My father spoke firmly. I am. She turned toward him. You're choosing him over Adrian? He replied quietly. I'm choosing the company. That ended the discussion. I stood up. Good. My father looked at me carefully. When will you return? Not so fast. He frowned. What do you mean? I need time. For what? To decide if I actually want this. Clara looked surprised. You just negotiated everything. Yes, I said. That doesn't mean I've agreed. My father looked exhausted. How long do you need? A few days. He nodded slowly. All right. I walked toward the door. Clara called after me. Daniel. I stopped. She asked quietly, do you hate us? I thought for a moment. Then I answered honestly. I don't know. I left the mansion without saying anything else. The next morning, I met Marcus and Sophia at the office. Marcus immediately noticed my expression. That meeting happened, didn't it? I nodded. Sophia leaned forward. What do they want? Me? Marcus laughed. Of course they did. Sophia looked curious. Did you agree? Not yet. Marcus crossed his arms. Explain. I sat down. They offer me control of Heir Corporation. Marcus whistled. That's huge. Sophia asked calmly. What are the conditions? I become CEO. The board steps aside. Adrian loses authority. Marcus grinned. You negotiated like a king. Sophia, study my face. But you're still unsure. I nodded. Yes. Marcus frowned. Why? Because returning changes everything. Sophia spoke quietly. It could reopen old wounds. Exactly. Marcus leaned forward. But think about the opportunity. I am. He continued. You could rebuild the company your way. Sophia added. And your reputation would become legendary. I sighed. This isn't about reputation. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Then what is it about? I looked at both of them. Closure. Sophia nodded slowly. That makes sense. Marcus rubbed his chin. You know what I think? What? I think you already made your decision. I smiled slightly. Maybe. Sophia spoke again. Just be careful. Why? Power changes people. Marcus laughed. She's talking about you. Sophia ignored him. I'm serious, she said. I nodded. So am I. That night, I sat alone in my apartment thinking about everything. 2 years ago, I left Heir Corporation broken. Now they were asking me to save it. But something had changed. Back then, I wanted their approval. Now I didn't need it. I looked at the city lights through the window. Then I whispered quietly to myself. If I go back, it will be on my terms. And for the first time, I realized something important. I wasn't the desperate son anymore. I was the man holding the power.